It's the appointed hour. We're waiting on the quorum. We're at the appointed hour. We will call to order the meeting of the MAPS 3 Citizens Advisory Board for February the 24th, 2011. In your packet, members of the committee, you have been provided with the minutes, proposed minutes of the January 27th meeting. Are there additions or corrections to those minutes? If not, would you approve them? It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? They're approved. The next item on our agenda is a resolution to the City Council approving a contract with Architects in Partnership for MAPS 3 Senior Health and Wellness Centers for the scope of work development. Eric, would you like to explain that, and then we'll ask Michael for his comments from the committee as well.
Be happy to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have included, as part of the handouts this morning, a revised contract for reconsideration. The one that was distributed last week was draft. The one that we've handed out is still draft, but it includes several additions for your information. What you will find in the new handout is that the scope of work, Exhibit A, has been fully completed. You'll also find that the subconsultant list has been fully completed, but the item that you'll find that's still missing is the fee, and we are still in negotiations of that fee. We're optimistic that we're going to have those completed in the next few days, but unfortunately we just don't have that done this morning. This was discussed at length at the subcommittee meeting. Surely allow Mr. Dover to add additional comments, but they did recommend that we move forward with this scope. This is the scope of work development that's going to include a variety of services, again, from identifying the needs of the facility for Oklahoma City, collecting demographic information, going through a variety of services to help us better understand senior health and wellness centers and costs and operational type items and partners. And so those are all summarized again in that Exhibit A. I can answer any questions that you have at this time.
Michael, I know that your committee discussed moving this forward without the fee in, and would you like to share with us the thinking of the committee?
Well, of course, we have all the faith and trust in Eric and all of the work that he's done and the experience he's had in this area. And we've actually had also another one of our board members who was on Maps for Kids who has also had this experience with working with Eric in the city. And we all know that we will get the best deal we can get for our money, and that that Eric will be able to negotiate the best kind of contract to get us going.
So your committee's position is you'd like for us to move forward with this as presented?
Yes.
And Eric, one other question from me. Is it your anticipation that that would be completed before this is taken to council?
It will be completed before council considers it, because clearly they have to approve a final contract. A couple other points of interest. Council did have some comments on Tuesday regarding the item. They wanted to ensure that the scope was complete. Some of the things that they offered was they wanted to make sure that as we went through the programming phase, when we identify the facility, that we remain flexible, that we aren't locking ourselves into a prototype, I think is the word that was used, and they wanted to make sure that we had a core set of services, obviously, is something that we're conceiving, but that there's flexibility once we get into the areas to provide other needs. I mean, there's a variety of things from aquatic components to mental health to other things that we have not probably even identified, and that's a part of this scope, that the buildings be flexible designs wherever they're constructed throughout the city. The subcommittee also had a comment that they made that I want to share, that was how the public will be engaged at some point into the process, and we're anticipating a public process once we identify those partners and locations. This is simply going to get us started, but we do foresee a public component at a point when we're actually in the design phase, making ready for construction. The last comment that I'll offer is the fee range was asked during the subcommittee meeting, and I just want to share that also with this advisory board, but it's in the range of somewhere between $175,000 and $275,000. Obviously, it's difficult for us to determine these fees. Industry standards in some cases, if you were to look at those, suggest that it would be 2% for programming for a project that doesn't include design or construction. But in this case, we don't know what the construction cost, and that's one of the items that's included as a part of the contract. So we are working with the consultant to go through hourly assessments and looking at the task specifically. When we complete that, we will then immediately forward it to City Council following your recommendation for approval, so we can hopefully begin work in March.
And the action that you would like to have taken by this committee today is the approval of the resolution subject to completing the fee portion?
Yes, please.
Any other comments, Michael, about that?
Oh, I suppose I was going to wait till we get to the subcommittee reports, but since we're talking about this, just a couple of things that I think made the committee feel really comfortable going forward. And one of those has to do with ADG and the fact that they also have a consultant on board that has experience in the senior wellness area. And so it really made us comfortable to hear about the peer review that will be taking place as the consultants, AIP, working with the wellness centers, make their reports. We'll also have a secondary kind of be able to review and peer review on suggestions and what have you. And I think that made some of us feel real comfortable as well, Tom.
Councilman McAtee?
Question. The council, as you know, Eric, was quite vocal on public input. Do we need to add a bullet on here about public input or not? And I'm trying to second guess what they're going to say when they get this.
For this scope of work, we're not seeing as a need to do the public input process because it's so early. We are seeing, though, however, that once we have one cited and once we start getting into those site-specific issues, location, amenities, and the things that will actually be provided in a facility, that, yes, we need a public process. This scope is really to just help us further understand what we should expect the cost to be, how much we should expect to budget for size so that we can pass a lot of that information to ADG as we work towards programmatic goals of maintaining 8 projects and $777 million. And some of those just early questions that we have, filling the void that we just don't have on the senior wellness, but we already have that on the other 7 projects.
Okay, I get that speech ready to go then, because I don't know whether they'll ask that or not.
Right.
That's,
Councilman McAtee, I can assure you the record will reflect in the minutes of the meeting. We discussed this at length, did we not? This whole public input, and there are those of us who, as you, feel very strongly, the importance of that public input. But I think Eric did a very good job of explaining the process. I think will best go forward when we're able to have some parameters and some of the consultants that we'll be able to take to who will turn out to be perhaps whoever our institutional partners may be, and let the institutional partners and the communities representing those institutional partners be a part of this process. And so I assure you we spoke at length, and Eric is well aware and is very supportive of having that happen.
Other questions? Rusty?
I want to be clear, I guess, the resolution that we'll be voting on here is not to approve the contract, but to recommend a resolution for the City Council to consider and approving, and they will, and as Tom, Chairman pointed out, they'll have reviewed the final contract. I guess that's right. We're not approving the contract. It's a little different, correct? The reason I asked, as you point out, the fee's not in here, but also the contract. I haven't had time to review the contract. So is there a distinction? We're not approving the contract. This board is not.
Let me read you the relevant portion of the resolution,
Yeah.
and maybe that will answer the question. There are a good number of whereases. The action part is, now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and City Council of the City of Oklahoma City that the contract with Architects and Partnership for MAPS 3 Senior Health and Wellness Center scope of work development be approved, subject to negotiations completing. That's what they're asking us to do today. So we're not being asked to approve in blank. We're being asked to move this forward to the City Council, subject to them completing the negotiations on the fee. And that's what they're asking us to do. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes. We don't see any changes to the scope of work. So what the scope you have included in your packets, there's no change there. We're not looking at changes in any other portion of the contract other than the fee at this point, and it's simply just a matter of us agreeing on a dollar value to place into the blanks that are there.
And I would add, Rusty, that if we, is it the plan to take this to council next Tuesday?
Subject to the completion of negotiations, yes.
Which I guess I'm saying to you that take all the time you want to review the contract and give your comments to Eric, and they can be incorporated, as can the fees in the negotiation. If there are some things, if there are some points you'd like to make, Eric will take those to the council and to Councilman McAtee. Would that be a way to do this? Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. Shall we approve the resolution? It's been moved for it to be approved. Is there a second? It's been seconded. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The resolution is adopted. The next item on our agenda is a resolution to the council approving a contract with Garver LLC for MAPS 3 Oklahoma River Race Course lighting improvements. And Eric, would you explain that, and then Dee or Michael, if you all have additional comments, you can add those.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This contract, we also have a handout for you today. We were able to complete the negotiations since the packets were mailed out last week. You'll find a completed fee schedule. You'll find the time frames that are also included there in the scope of work Exhibit A. We were able to confirm as a part of the negotiations the estimated construction cost of $3 million. You'll find that the fees inserted there are $250,800 for basic services, $10,200 for additional services, for a total contract of $261,000. This is a complete contract that does have some tasks. It has some preliminary tasks that are going to be completed in a 45-day time period. That's the early assessment, the surveying work, the basic design components. There's the second portion of the contract that's the actual construction documents, what will be required of the contractor, the bidding portion, and of course the oversight of construction, and that's a 60-day time frame to complete the construction documents. The contract's included again as a handout that we provided this morning, and we are recommending its approval so that we can proceed.
Dee, did you want to add anything from the committee, or?
Yes, we did meet this week, and we did meet this week, and I'd like to say that it's important that we get this done.
The lighting, there's actually, we're setting a trend here. We are probably the first one in the country, isn't that right, to have this kind of lighting. The lighting will make it better also for television, which we discussed. And this gives us something to move ahead with, to show the public and to get Oklahoma City ready to really, really compete in river activities. Do you have anything, Michael?
Eric, I think there's also an event upcoming this summer that ideally we would hope to get the lighting up for, which may or may not happen, but that's kind of what's kind of pushing this thing forward.
And we're proceeding as quickly as we can. One of the questions that did come up in the subcommittee meeting was can we actually get this achieved by the end of the summer for the U.S. Masters Rowing Nationals? And there is some concern on what we'll call the lead times for ordering these poles. The poles are a special order kind of item, and we're already seeing that they're going to take some considerable time. Included in the contract, if it's a benefit, the part of the additional services that we might choose to engage is an early bid package. If we find it beneficial to order, say, the poles or some of the electrical long lead items early, we might actually order those before the design is complete, but that's going to be a part of the study portion to see if there's an advantage to even doing that. But absolutely, we're going to do everything possible to try to make that end of summer event, but if not, we will definitely be very far along in the process so that we can be attractive to events after that, all future rowing events.
Other questions or comments, Councilman?
One question that the council might ask is, okay, the amount of money that is being approved right here, how does that fit into the amount of money total that we have for the river project, including the Whitewater Park? Are we still on good solid ground there?
So the original estimate for the lighting system was $3 million, and we are able to confirm that it's $3 million, so it fits into the river model.
So the council will be very happy to hear that. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Well, then, shall we consider the resolution? Is there a motion? Susan moves the adoption of the resolution. Is there a second? And it's been seconded. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The resolution is adopted. Item 5 on our agenda is a presentation on the MAPS 3 program. We have our colleagues here from the Architectural Design Group, who many of you will know have been present at every subcommittee meeting and have been helping us at every step of the way. I'm going to ask Eric if he will introduce our speaker and colleagues.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're at a point where we're proceeding quickly with the MAPS 3 implementation plan, and with ADG's assistance, they're starting to formulate a plan to get the information to you over the next several months. And so today will be the first opportunity for you to see some of the conceptual criteria that they're looking at as a part of the project, some of the data collection that they've already completed. This is a presentation that was actually provided to council also on Tuesday. But with that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Mike Mize with ADG, and he's going to provide and, of course, can answer any additional questions that you have following this presentation. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Eric. Mr. Chairman, board members, a pleasure to be here. I want to take this opportunity also to introduce a couple of folks you may have met or may not. Nicole Franklin, who works with ADG and has been at virtually every subcommittee meeting as well, and will continue to be very actively involved. And Jim Graebner with the Lomorado Group, who is our modern streetcar consultant, who came into town on Tuesday and will be leaving tomorrow, and has spent a significant amount of time not only with the subcommittee but with some key individuals on the AA committee and other folks, and Rick Kane to try and get a better feel for exactly how the modern streetcar will eventually be developed. I will now go to the presentation. Just want to set this up just a little bit. This is the first phase of the implementation plan, and the object behind this presentation is to give you all an idea for the criteria and the assumptions that we are using and other considerations that we are using to develop the next step of the implementation plan, which we will present in the middle or later March, which will actually be the first draft of a prioritization of all of the MAPS 3 projects. So this is an opportunity for you to let us know whether or not you think we've included all of the considerations that are pertinent to developing that prioritization plan. As Eric said, we presented it to City Council the other day. They had a couple of comments and suggestions, which I will just summarize at the end of my presentation. But so the idea here is to give you an opportunity to weigh in on the assumptions and considerations that will be used in developing the next step. I think you all know we were hired in December to start this, and the implementation, the full implementation plan, we expect to actually have approved sometime in May. We will present the prioritization plan in March. Excuse me, and there's on April 19th, there's a scheduled joint City Council and Advisory Board meeting to discuss the material that we will have presented at that time. Primary assumptions. We tried to get as basic as we could. This is a pay-as-you-go process, so that each project must be fully funded, or each phase of a project must be fully funded before it can begin. We expect about $8 million per month in tax generation, and there are a total of 8 projects planned at a budget of $777 million. One of the things that we've tried to, that Eric has tried to demonstrate in each of the subcommittee meetings is that the more costly projects are going to require a longer tax period, and that inflation will obviously have an impact on each of these budgets because because it is pay-as-you-go. The earlier projects may have a slightly lower budget to reflect the fact that they're coming earlier in the project, so that projects which are later in the process, which will be more directly impacted by inflation, can have a slightly larger budget. So the projects, you've seen the project list, they're listed here. Just in the order was chosen to just reflect the size of the projects from most expensive to least expensive. And once again, these budgets, you may see some changes when we present the prioritization plan next month based on our estimates on inflation. Project order considerations in general. Some of the projects may have an economic impact that will be considered. Some of the projects may be completed in phases. Some of those are very logical phases in terms of construction, and may include phases for design, site improvement and development, and actual construction of the building. Others may be phased geographically, and those would logically be wellness centers, sidewalks, and trails, which can be phased based on their geography. Some projects may require a significant amount more planning, land acquisition, and engineering than others. There may be an advantage to coordinate with other major projects or events, and we've listed some of those here in the presentation. Some of those are obvious. I mean, transit, for example, we're doing everything we can to coordinate with Project 180. There are events for the conventions, potential events for the convention center, river, fairgrounds, which also need to be considered. And with respect to the sidewalks and trails, trying to coordinate with current city planning and master plans for sidewalks and trails. Other considerations, there are third-party studies which need to be concluded before some of these projects will be able to start. You actually approved resolutions for 2 contracts that fall into this category this morning. Certain projects will require ongoing operational funding, such as the downtown park and the wellness centers, and those will be considerations that will be part of our analysis. The timing of certain projects may be influenced by the knowledge of similar projects in competing cities, and the 2 examples that come to mind with respect to this item are the convention center and the fair park improvements, where we will take into consideration what competing cities are currently doing and what they have planned, so that we can use that in our analysis to try and take advantage of being first in the market or having the right amount of space to better serve Oklahoma City's convention and fair park venues. This is a list of resources that we have begun to use. It's a pretty significant list. The basic list, one of the basic components is the resource guide, which you have all received. But there are a number of other master plans, for example, for the river and the fair park, which we are using. We're also looking at all kinds of other information that's been produced with respect to each of the respective projects, and are trying to incorporate as much of that information as we can, including comments from the subcommittees, comments from City Council, and trying to put all of that into the analysis as we move forward. We're now going to get into the specific projects and start with the Convention Center. We do have a consultant by the name of Convention Sports and Leisure, which has a significant amount of experience in the Oklahoma City area, both with the Convention Center and with the fair park, so that they will be part of, their recommendations will be part of any analysis that we provide. The site selection timeline, you may remember that committee is currently working and has met several times, actually has met twice and is meeting again next week to try and work on a site selection for the Convention Center. Future development economic impact. There's a question about how important it is to have a Convention Center hotel open simultaneously with the Convention Center. That will be a consideration. We also are, as we said before, coordinating with other projects, other MAPS 3 projects, with Project 180 and other projects ongoing in the city. The downtown park, specific considerations. We have, once again, a different consultant, Bay Area Economics, which has a significant amount of experience, particularly with downtown parks, not just parks in general, but with downtown parks, that will be providing input for us. We have a potential completion date of 2014 to coincide with the opening of the boulevard for at least some phase of the park. We also are considering a timeline relative to not only to the boulevard completion, but the Devon Tower construction. There are going to be constraints due to the I-40 relocation process, which will be considered, the Skydance Bridge, and project phasing, which will logically be an upper park and a lower park. Modern streetcar. I've just introduced Mr. Gravener from Lomorado, who's going to be assisting us in the process. I mentioned before coordination with Project 180, coordination with the downtown park and convention center projects. And as you can see, the timing on some of these is going to be particularly challenging, but we'll take our best first stab at it, and then as more information is developed by the subcommittees and the consultants, we will incorporate that into the plan. Lead time to order streetcars, track, and other components is going to be a significant consideration. The determination of the type of power supply upon which these cars will operate is a significant issue. Future development and economic impact in the area immediately adjacent to the tracks to the streetcar will also be considered. And there's several opportunities for phasing with respect to the streetcar, not including ordering of cars, rail, ahead of time before the actual construction is going to take place. Some of those lead times are pretty significant. The Oklahoma River. Mentioned before, timing of upcoming river events, future development and economic impact, coordination with the American Indian Cultural Center and Museum, and project phasing. Project phasing on the river is pretty logical. There are a number of separate projects within the river that we will look at in terms of phasing and where they go in the prioritization plan. State Fairgrounds. Once again, Convention Sports and Leisure will be providing input and analysis for us. We've met with Tim O'Toole and are working on trying to coordinate with major state fair park events, including the State Fair, which is a significant event that will need to be worked around with respect to construction. Future development and economic impact, and there's also a separate parcel of money that is related to the improvements of on May Avenue, which were part of a separate bond issue, not part of MAPS 3. It was a 2007 bond issue, I believe, and we're going to coordinate with those efforts as well. The health and wellness centers. We'll be working closely with, we have one consultant on board and are looking at another possible consultant with Senior Wellness Center experience to help us in this analysis. We will be looking at the data that's currently available to try and make some preliminary determinations about the number and locations of centers. The level and nature of interest of potential operating partners, which will be have a significant impact on the timing. Project phasing, once again, probably geographically. And City Council has expressed a desire that at least one of these projects be put early in the project timeline, and we will certainly consider that as well. Trail improvements, there are some land acquisition and right-of-way issues that need to be considered with the trails. We need to coordinate with existing trails, master plans, and city efforts with respect to the trails. Project phasing, once again, is most likely to be geographic. The City Council has also expressed a desire for some portion of the trails to be completed early in the scheduling process. Sidewalk improvements, coordinating with the city GEO bond sidewalk projects, private development sidewalk, and other sidewalk projects that are ongoing within the city. Phasing, once again, probably geographically. And once again, City Council's expressed a desire for some portion of the sidewalks to come early in the process. The next steps are, we've received some input from City Council, which I can briefly summarize with respect to the wellness centers. City Council, as has been noted here, is very concerned that the wellness centers not necessarily be a cookie cutter. That each location for the wellness center that's determined has an opportunity to be a unique center which best serves the population that will be in the surrounding areas. So one of the goals that we have, and one of the goals that that AIP has, is to try and present a list of options that will be available for each of the individual wellness centers so that they can determine what works best in each geographic area. That was one of the comments. I'm sorry, I have to get out my cheat sheet. With respect to transit, there's City Council's expressed a concern that the streetcar route provide potential future access to other parts of the city rather than just the downtown loop. And they also expressed an interest that when we provide this presentation in its final form, that rather than just list the resources, we will provide a list of resources on each individual slide to show you which resources we've used to actually make our recommendations later on. I mentioned before that in March we'll provide our initial attempt at the prioritization schedule. In April, there's the joint workshop with the City Council and this board, and in May we hope to have approval for the MAPS 3 implementation plan, which will be really the first step in getting all of these projects ordered and scheduled so that everyone knows when they'll come in the process. And with that, I'll ask if you have any questions.
Rusty?
Chairman, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mize. Overall, it's a very good summary. I appreciate the highlighting the key issues and a very good plan, it seems to me, for the stage that we're at, obviously, but very good and comprehensive, covering everything. And while I mention it, I appreciate all the attendance at all the subcommittee meetings. There have been a lot, and appreciate you guys showing up, and it's been, so far, very well done. I hate to drill down on just one issue, but it is just something that came to mind, so ignoring the overall how well the plan is, I had more of a comment, and it's on the outline of the published budgets, and in particular on the health and wellness centers, the 50 millions. Yeah, it's been brought to my attention, and I also saw where the council also briefly discussed with 50 million whether or not how many centers could be done, and you also highlighted that on the senior wellness center slide. So it's already been questioned whether 4 to 5 could be done. I just wanted to be sure, I'm sure you're aware, but I wanted to highlight to this board and the public and you the fact that the city market, the materials used by the city before the vote did say 4 to 5 centers. I would hope that it could be accomplished in 50 million. I would hesitate for us to start backing off of anything that was put in the materials of what was said we intended to do. It was not that detailed what the projects would be. It was pretty broad, but when some of the specifics, 4 to 5 centers, it was put out there. I would hope we could do it in $50 million. If that is not possible, based on the plans and what needs to be done, and we can't do 4 to 5, then that's the case. So I would instead recommend, my comment would be if there's excess revenue, if there's too much allocated other projects, if we find some other funds that hopefully, since the materials before the vote said 4 to 5, hopefully we can either do it in the budget or find other funds, still do 4 to 5.
And Mr. LaForge, I think, that is our intent, is to uphold a lot of the information that was done earlier. The council's comments that came from Councilman White were really more specifically that he just had concerns that we made sure that we had quality centers. And if that meant that it needed fewer centers that were of a higher quality, that we just take that into consideration. And so I don't think there was a decision to reduce by any means, but at least just keep an open mind as we move forward. And we just want to make sure when we engage AIP, and of course using the services of Architectural Design Group, that we just bring forth those recommendations for further consideration, not knowing what the costs really are just yet.
Sure. And real quick, and I agreed with the councilman's comments. It wasn't a disagreement. He made good points, and I hated to hear the possibility it wouldn't be enough. So instead, more the point is if that does turn out to be true, if his concern is accurate, maybe there's some other funds. Maybe we can still do the 4 to 5.
I think the comments, Rusty, were made by Councilman White, but I think let me convey the sentiment, what I believe, of the council. And the sentiment of the council is to deliver, and it's going to be very generic, a quality product that meets the needs of our senior citizens that includes 4 or 5 centers dispersed around the town. And that's the challenge, is it not, Mike, that your subcommittee is working with to accomplish that? And so there's no thought whatsoever from the council standpoint of backing off the 4 to 5. The challenge is to do it. And I point that the challenge to do that with the monies, for example, that were involved in renovating the downtown arena. Some trade-offs had to be made as they went along. Some value engineering had to be done. But the project is going to be brought in with the monies that are available and committing or performing what the citizens were told. And the citizens were told 4 or 5 senior wellness centers. And that's our goal, right, Mike?
Yes, thank you, Councilman. And as we talked at the subcommittee and in some of the thought going forth, obviously, the biggest variable on the number of wellness centers has going to be the number of institutional partners, because it's going to take some money to operate these facilities. As we've discussed here before, there are no city dollars that are going to go into these operations. And so I hope that there are 4 or 5 institutional partners in the community who are interested. The good news is, I think we've just had 3 meetings thus far. And the good news is that there are some institutions who have been coming to our meetings, and it's encouraging to begin to see that the folks out there are thinking about the wellness centers and how that might be a fit. And this might be a good opportunity to say for all of us, obviously we all know that our meetings are open to the public, but to encourage folks that you all are visiting with who you think might have an interest in operating one of these facilities to start attending the meeting, because that will of course give those folks some idea of where we're going with this, and of course it will show us who is interested. There will be some form, correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, some form of RFP at some point, but it sure is good to know that there are folks out there who might be interested.
Other comments?
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Mize. Like I said, I hated to drill down on one. Overall, a great big picture implementation plan, I thought. But I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Mike, when I look at your list of considerations, it seems like every project has very many reasons to be at the top of the list. And so
If you've attended all the subcommittee meetings, you would find that would be true.
Right.
Yes.
As Mr. Mize also mentioned in the presentation, there has been a date established for the workshop of April 19th, and so we will be sending out some more information and formalizing that through emails to each of you. But you may want to go ahead and mark that on your calendar, and we'll get some exact dates and times and location, or I should say times and locations forthcoming.
With that in mind, one question for you, Eric, I think, and Tom. Each subcommittee is very passionate about their area, and the Modern Streetcar Subcommittee yesterday was very passionate about theirs and wanted theirs at the top of the list. How are we going to get this framework disseminated to them so they understand the game plan? Do they understand the game plan, or how are we going to get them to understand this as we move forward?
From a subcommittee standpoint, ADG is making preparations to actually make small presentations to each individual subcommittee just on those projects. And so getting into some greater detail than what we've seen today, next month is going to be a busy month for ADG in preparation for those April 19th workshop, and then, of course, our target to have a approved plan in May. And so next month you should be able to see those as you each attend your meetings, and the stakeholders are also there as well.
Councilman, I'd also say that you and the other members of the council provided us a great framework for that line of communication because, as you already know, every subcommittee is chaired and co-chaired by members of the Citizens Advisory Board. So we have provided by you all a great line of communication about what goes on here. So I think we'll be able to adequately communicate about that.
Other questions?
Any other questions for Mike?
Eric, I noticed we have a logo.
We do have a logo. You probably have seen that also this month at your subcommittee meetings. This was a logo that was debuted by the mayor at the State of the City address at the end of his address, and we are now starting to use that. That's courtesy of Architectural Design Group, the Gooden Group, the Funnel Group, all party to the MAPS 3 process. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Congratulations on that.
Well, thank you. We are really pleased to be working with the Gooden Group and Funnel Design with respect to some of the graphics and some of the other presentations that you'll see going forward.
Well, I want to underscore what Rusty has already said, and that is how much we appreciate the diligence with which you're approaching this and your commitment to every subcommittee meeting, and it's great to have you all as a part of the team going forward.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, Mike. Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
As we move to the next item on our agenda, it's a discussion or any other action regarding MAPS 3 program. Eric, is there anything that comes under that item that you'd like to present?
I think just as a relation to the program, we are typically including informational items in your packets. They're not intended to be acted on or action taken. But if I might address those two items now, you'll find included in your packet a updated revenue and expenditure report and you'll notice that it has the updated totals on that. I'm going to go ahead and call to your attention, you'll notice in this month that there's actually a negative interest posting, and this coincides with what we discussed last month with the way the investment income is being handled differently, or at least I should say the proceeds from the investment income are being handled differently. This isn't something that you're going to see on a month-to-month basis. This is still a part of that correction that's being done. We anticipate that next month it may be another correction month, but you'll see that those will be positive gains as we move forward, and these are all being done to be accomplished by the end of the fiscal year. I do have our City Treasurer, Bob Ponkiller, with us today if there were any questions, but I just wanted to bring that report to you and just let you know that sales tax proceeds continue to come in above our target projections, and so that is very encouraging, and can answer any questions you have on that particular report. If there are none, then I would discuss the map. So any questions on the report that you may have today? Okay. If I move on to the update of the park acquisition map, we also have Joe Van Boord with Okira with us today, and there's been significant updates. And Jovan, can you bring them up to date, please? Thank you.
Good morning. Glad to be here at your monthly meeting. Just wanted to bring you a further update on the acquisition program that is for the Central Park, the MAPS 3 Park. Basically, we have offers out to all but 9 of the parcels on the property there within the Central Park boundaries. 5 of those parcels are on the north side of 6th Street. 4 of them are on the south of 6th Street. I'm sorry, 5th Street. We have closed 1 more additional property since last month. We have 2 more that closings are secured, but just have not occurred yet. So we are moving along. We do have all the property for the Skydance Bridge underhand. There's 1 property that's under litigation right now, but those are secure. We have offers out to the 2 residential properties that are within the boundaries. That would be parcels 18 and 19, and both of those will involve relocation. One of them is a tenant, and the other one is owner-occupied. So we're moving ahead. Would be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Questions?
With that, I don't have any other program updates other than I think ADG's presentation today gives you a good idea of what to expect in the next month with new subcommittee content, and then we'll continue to proceed on the projects as we've already started. So we appreciate you very much. Thank you.
We have effectively combined items 6 and 8 on the agenda. So I want to move back to item 7, which would be the subcommittee reports. And I'm going to call on Zane Boatwright first for the for a subcommittee report on the transportation modern streetcar. Zane?
I hope that wasn't because you thought I was going to take so long. As has been alluded to several times today, we've had some very spirited meetings of the streetcar transit subcommittee, and it's been very beneficial. We've got a great group of people who are very knowledgeable about what's going on and have really studied deeply the possible routes. What we've come up with by majority vote is that next month we are going to bring a proposal forward to the board for a possible route depiction. And what we're trying to do is to get information out to Eric and the City Council what we believe a good possible route would be, and take into consideration Project 180 and other things that are going on downtown, so that action can begin to be taken by these people to accommodate the possible route structure. So we've got some maps that we're going to hand out to you that depict what the streetcar committee has come up with, a proposal that we, like I said, we didn't get it in time for this month's meeting, so it'll be next time. But what we've identified is you'll see solid lines and dashed lines. And I want to try to explain what that is. A solid line is what we are calling a preferred route. And that is a route that We feel very confident about that would be an anchor for the MAPS 3 streetcar system. We wanted to identify that so that Project 180 could take into consideration anything that they would need to do on streets that would accommodate rails or utilities that would need to be moved or adjusted. The dash lines on the map are protected corridors, and those are areas where we feel like it's a good possibility that the streetcar would traverse. However, we need to take into consideration other MAPS projects, but we want to be able to send the message to Project 180 and other organizations that are working in those areas to make accommodations that could address those. So I want to emphasize the fact that while this is going to be a recommendation from the streetcar at the next committee member, this is not necessarily finalized in that it's not written in stone. There are changes that can be made. There are questions that need to be answered as far as the engineering or the feasibility of some of these. We've got right-of-ways as far as crossing over with the Santa Fe rail lines and how that would be accommodated. So the second map you've been given to is what we are calling a western corridor, and that is, again, identified to send the message to Project 180 to accommodate the possibility when they're putting in curbs, utilities, that they could also be dealing with streetcar routes. So I think next month, Eric is probably going to explain what we mean by presenting it next month, so I'll let you go ahead.
So the meeting that occurred last night, I mean, we wrapped up after 5 o'clock, and we did our best this morning to put the drawings together. There were several motions that were made at the meeting yesterday, and so what you're finding on these drawings, and we actually have two of our subcommittee members I see in our audience today as well, I think in support of this, but they're anxious to move this forward clearly, and so we're moving that ahead. And so what you have copies of, those are going to be distributed immediately this morning. But there was a lot of confirmation in what we'll call the partial route recommendation that includes what we'll call a Bricktown to Midtown type of route. And so they're looking at connections. And I think what you'll find on that drawing, one of the reasons that you'll find that there's some protected corridor in the Bricktown area is that there's still some decisions to be made on where the convention center is going to be located. There's still some decisions on the hub location, and so they want to reserve an opportunity to make sure that that portion of the route gets adjusted if necessary to accommodate the locations of those. But there's quite a bit of certainty, at least from the subcommittee's perspective, of the routes that you see in the dark blue lines and the connections that those are making. On this drawing is approximately about 4 miles worth of route. Again, if you recall from the proposal, it's 5 to 6 miles of streetcar. And so there's some additional routes that are anticipated. And so as you refer to the second drawing that's not a complete route, what Mr. Boatwright referenced, the western corridor, it kind of loops over to the Walker Avenue area. You know, that's one of the possibilities that they're wanting to consider in the future, along with others that might be connections to 23rd Street, connections to other critical areas that are yet to be discussed. And so there's clearly going to have to be some decisions made in coming months, knowing that those are some of those, if all those, if not exceed the 6-mile limit that we know that we're going to be under. So, but anyway, the subcommittee is obviously going to meet next month, and I think there's going to be some additional discussions. But with that, we're going to be distributing these as quickly as we can as the partial preferred recommendation of the MAPS 3 subcommittee to be taken action by the advisory board next month.
I'd just like to add to that, Eric, if I may, that a lot of consideration has been given to spokes, if you will, off of this original route that would expand further in the future. So this is not just the end of it.
No, I think my compliments to the subcommittee. Very good discussion yesterday. And again, it's been pointed out, I don't think it can be reemphasized enough. This is viewed by the subcommittee, correct me if I'm wrong, saying as the beginning portion, and that the ultimate streetcar system that will be running in Oklahoma City in 10 or 15 or 20 years will have this or something like this as its base, but there will be these spokes going out which will reach different parts of the city. And that's one of the considerations that the City Council was very interested in, of making sure that this initial system could be expanded into the future and reach the modern streetcar into different areas of the city. And I think the committee has done an excellent job of doing that. So this is just the beginning, and it's just for MAPS 3. You'll hear a lot going on about other possible funding sources, but this is just intended to fulfill the commitment of MAPS 3 and $130 million that's available to the modern streetcar.
Very well said and right on. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Dee, is there anything additional that you all want to bring us from the River Committee?
Well, thank you for passing the resolution, and the other issues that we're dealing with as well as the wind barrier. And that has some challenges because what they actually thought at first is going to be a little more complicated. Eric, you might explain that.
Sure, I'll be happy to. We had initially had a goal to have also the windscreen contract negotiated and on for the advisory board today, but we were unsuccessful in doing that. When we visited with the consultant, Elliott and Associates, there was some early work that was done, and some of the structural requirements exceed what some of our original thoughts were, and so they're having to take some extra time to look at the structural elements of the windscreens. Obviously, very high panels, wind is going to be a significant factor, and the strength of those panels and how they're going to actually operate is an important part to us assessing how much the fee and how much work is going to need to be undertaken. And so we're hopeful to have that recommendation back to you next month.
Okay. Michael, is there anything else to add from the Senior Wellness Center Committee? Park Committee, Kimberly?
Park did not meet this month,
Okay.
so we're still status quo and eager to move on next month.
State Fair Committee, Rusty?
Nothing new to add from our subcommittee this month.
Okay. Sidewalks and Trails, Sue?
Our committee hasn't met. We're waiting on Eric and his team. They are gathering information for us on what is in place sidewalk-wise and trails.
Okay. I'll provide just a brief report on the Convention Center Subcommittee. Our committee met on Monday and met with both our consultants, both local and those from out of town as well. They provided us with a map that showed 7 possible locations for the Convention Center. Those were discussed briefly, but the principal item of action was to schedule a meeting that will occur next Tuesday, March the 1st, at 1:30. Any of you are invited to attend if you like. It will be a workshop meeting where we will plan to spend something on the order of 2 to 3 hours. The consultants will be there. They have provided us with a proposed list of site selection criteria and the map, and we expect this to be a significant working session that will be a major step forward in this process. Anything you want to add to that, Eric?
I don't have anything further other than, March 1st is going to be a significant starting point, and I think some of the considerations are, they've come in with a really open mind as a part of the consulting team. There aren't predetermined sites, and I think as a part of the early discussions this week, there was actually another site that was identified, bringing the total to 8 now. But there could be more. I mean, as they work through this process, they are going to evaluate every potential site that is possible for the convention center, and then go through a prioritization and to a point where the goal is to identify the top 3 or 4 sites and do a very in-depth, detailed review of those to make that final recommendation. So that's going to occur over the next 60 to 90 days.
Zane?
I just want to ask, in your invitation to the board members to participate or to visit the meeting, do we need to take into consideration the quorum for the MAPS Advisory Board to make sure that we don't have too many people there from the advisory board?
We do. We need to express the same cautions as we've discussed earlier. So if you plan to attend that, if you'd please let me know so that we could coordinate that.
It will be Eric and our legal counsel explained to me, this will be a public meeting, but it's not one where the public will be invited to participate in the planning process. I mean, this is something where it will be a committee meeting with committee members working. The public can be there to observe, and but we have to be cautious about a quorum as you suggested. Anything else, Eric, about that?
We have nothing further.
That then is all of the MAPS 3 subcommittee reports, and I think we've already taken care of the informational items, have we not?
We have.
All right, well then we want to open the meeting for comments by members of the board. Anything else to add at this meeting?
Not so much a comment, Tom. Eric, when will you know the kind of how much time that April 19th meeting, how long it will be, and when will it be? How soon do you expect to figure all that out?
I think we can have the information hopefully in the next week for sure.
Good.
So very soon.
Yes, I guess we have an anniversary of the MAPS tax coming up, April 1st. Do we have any event or report or anything planned to update the citizenry on what's going on?
So the anniversary is approaching, and it is on our radar. It's not something that's going to go by as forgotten, but we're working with ADG and as a part of the public relations portion to come up with some ideas, and that's a very active discussion on how we're going to promote that and if an event is possible. Clearly, we're going to have some news opportunities. I'm not sure if there's going to be, an event that's attendance of, but we'll bring that forward to you in the next meeting or two.
Or just a report to the citizens, I guess,
Right.
on where we are in status.
Yes.
Good idea, Michael. Anyone else?
Yes, I do want to bring up something because this has been asked to me several times, and I think I need to bring it up. People have asked me, what is going to happen with all the planning and all these wonderful things downtown? What happens with the homeless population? Is there any coordination or anything in the MAPS plan?
As a part of MAPS 3, it's just the 8 projects is our charge. I mean, obviously, that's an issue for downtown and Oklahoma City, but it's not a MAPS 3 charge.
Okay, so we just say it's not our problem?
It's not a MAPS 3 something that we're going to be able to address, but it's definitely a city issue, and I think that's something that the city needs to take on through other means and other programs and opportunities, just not specifically MAPS 3.
Okay, all right, you answered my question. Thank you.
Other comments? Eric or other staff members, any comments?
No further.
Well, we want to open it up now to our citizens who are here to be a part of this meeting. Are there any citizens here who would like to offer a comment? Michael? Would you introduce yourself and tell them the big job you have with our subcommittee?
Mark Gibbs, 601 North Broadway, MAPS 3 Transit Subcommittee. We've met 6 times now already. I understand for good reasons that some committees haven't been able to meet as often, so that's pretty nice work if you can get it. We've been through the grinder. We've had some excellent discussions and really worked through the situation. We spent a lot of time zooming out, shall we say, to think of how this would interface with future lines, and then coming back in and making sure that the map in front of you today, in which we've already formally recommended but won't formally come to you till next meeting, can work well and be expanded out to many near inner city neighbourhoods. Also, very pleased to hear about ADG talking about lead time. That's a very important consideration for the streetcar. The lead time to order the dedicated tracks. The rail is a very particular type of rail, and the streetcars themselves, there's quite a bit of lead time there. So we're not rushing. We're not rushing here to get ourselves at the front of the queue. I mean, those lead times will pretty much mean that we'd be in the middle of the projects when they go forward. But our deadline has been talked before as to identifying the core area, the Project 180 core, the routes that we want to. And there's 2 classifications. Preferred is where we do envisage at this point the line going through, and protected would be a lower level of work for Project 180 where they can relocate, they can. The top option is the preferred, and I know that Eric will talk more about this next month as well. As you can see, it's come up with what's starting to look like a very legible route, and that's been another consideration, very easy to understand, and also we've got that nice tagline, Bricktown to Midtown, encompasses what we're planning to do. Looking at about 4 miles there, so a partial core route or a partial route is the terms we're trying to use, and that does leave potentially 2 miles for a future or a later extension within the MAPS project to another area. We've been challenged by council to try and reach outside the greater downtown area, and there's various options that we've been looking at. Also, the alternatives analysis is proceeding at the moment, and they've also been looking at options, for instance, going out to the Health Science Centre. And the general feeling at the moment is the Health Science Centre would make a very logical route to be funded through federal funding primarily. So that's kind of what also this western corridor here, not shown, but ultimately you may well be seeing something going on out to the Health Science Centre, and that's how that axis would work. However, I think we're really pleased to get to where we got to, and that's why we can move forward. This is not the final route by any means. It's not necessarily the tracks will go, because it's the best available information we have now. But to get more information, we need to go into preliminary design, preliminary engineering, and that will give us important information about the types of propulsion for the system, where stops will be located, and so forth. And hopefully we can get into that in the next year, so that can also be coordinated with Project 180 when they go into work on these streets. And also, just to reiterate, we don't know yet the final locations for the hub and the convention centre. What you see down there was a pretty good system that would solve if the hub was at the Santa Fe location and the convention centre was at the Lumberyard location. But as we know, that may well not necessarily be the case, and so that's why we can't finalise something at this stage. So we've done what we can now to learn more information to take the process on. And we look forward to presenting that to you formally next month. But in the meantime, you have these maps here. If you do got any informal questions, I know that any member of the Transit Subcommittee would be more than happy to talk to you in more detail in the next coming month.
Thank you. We appreciate your comment.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, we appreciate everyone attending. I believe that concludes the business of the Advisory Board for today, and we're adjourned.